while we know we have a long list of headmates we do know about, we know for a fact there's a whole world we don't in our system.
Yeah, if my audio is mediocre, I'm sorry. I don't know how to fix that. I'm using my little earbuds today. And if they die, good luck, everyone. Content warnings for this episode include mental health, dysphoria, medical neglect, and bullying.
Genderful would like to acknowledge the Indigenous peoples and unceded lands that the producers, hosts, and guests live and have dwelt upon. Today we honor the
Coast Salish,
the Algonquin, Mohawk, and Anishinabewaki peoples.
Luiseño.
We honor the elders, the human, plant, and animal ancestors of these lands, and celebrate the living descendants of these peoples. May all beings tend these lands for the goodness of the next 7 generations and beyond.
Howdy, folks. Welcome to Genderful, a talk show interviewing gender diverse people about their special interests. Hi, I'm GenderMeowster, and my pronouns are they, them.
Hi, I'm Miranda Katita, and my pronouns are she, her.
The focus of our show is to interview trans, non-binary, agender, two-spirit, and gender diverse people regarding their special interests, passion projects, and resources for the gender diverse community.
We want our audience to know that we hold multiple diverse identities and bring these lenses to the show with our passion for telling our stories.
I identify as non-binary, transmasculine, polyamorous, ADHD, autistic, and disabled with chronic pain and mobility issues. I also am white and reside in the United States.
I identify as trans feminine, neurodivergent, queer, and a person of color residing in Canada. We invite you to remember that we are whole people with robust lives, friendships, challenges, and successes. We love and are loved, and we are delighted to share these stories with you.
As always, we kindly remind our listeners that no person is a monolith of their identities. Your identities can change over time and are valid every step of the way. And if you think you're gender diverse, you are gender diverse. There's no social or medical prerequisite to be included in the community.
Welcome, everyone, to Genderful. This week, our guest, Andy, he, they pronouns, also known as Crossroads, is chatting with us about dissociative identity disorder and how it affects all the aspects of their identity. Andy, I've really been enjoying your posts in the Discord server from various headmates. It's been interesting and wonderful seeing even like inner headmate conversations about things. And I'm delighted to have you here today with us. Welcome to Genderful.
Well, thank you for having us. And yeah, the Discord server has definitely been interesting because we don't usually talk publicly like that. So that's been new for us. So
yeah, well, I'm so honored that you at least some of you, I won't say you all because I can't assume every single headmate feels that way, but that some of you feel comfortable to share like that in the server. It's really it's like special to me. It's like, oh, we must be doing something right if people feel like they can be their authentic selves in this space. So I'm honored. I love that. Yeah. So our first question today is, we have two that we always ask our guests. What might be some things you can trace back to your youth that indicated you might be gender diverse one day?
Most of my childhood, when my mom looks back, was just like, no, yeah, this was not a surprise, which in itself is a little surprising. I actually grew up Jehovah's Witness, so any kind of gender diversity was not encouraged. That being said, it's pretty obvious early on that I didn't fit the typical mold for an AFAB person, and a couple of things that I could think of is just always trying to outdo everybody else, but that's just also competitiveness. Sorry, it's gonna be a lot for a little bit.
That's okay. I mean, take as much time as you need.
But yeah, other things are just like internal sense of self, whatever that means to a system. But has always, like, people have been like, you fit A, B, C, and D, and I'm just like, I think that I'm way over there. I'm not even on the alphabet that you're talking about right now, but that's okay. And then trying to learn the language for that, coming from a religious background, was difficult, and I think it took me a little longer than it would have if I didn't have to like relearn languages, but yeah, I got there.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely I can definitely relate with some parts of that. the competitiveness for some reason that's like encoded as a male trait in our culture. I mean, even though like I've met many people who identify as women who are also competitive, but like for whatever reason, that's something that is discouraged for people who are kind of presenting as females. So, and you know, being a very competitive person myself, it's just like I'm not wanting to let that go because I like being competitive. But it's also interesting that you bring up like having the language for certain things, because that's something our guests kind of bring up very frequently, is like not knowing how to express their feelings. And like you kind of mentioned that it's like, oh, I fit in like A, B, C, D boxes. Like, well, I mean, I'm not even like I'm in Eta, Alpha, and Omega boxes. Like, what is this? So I can imagine it was been quite a journey for you to kind of not only with the gender stuff, but also with the identity stuff as well. On top of that, how would you say your relationship with your gender has evolved over time?
It is. I don't know if there's like a quick way of saying how it's evolved. Usually, because sorry, it's loud. a lot of people have opinions, but it's interesting because our relationship with our gender, our sexuality, our relationship style, and our sense of self has all kind of stacked and grown and evolved together. Which, like, looking back, I don't think I would have gotten to expressing my gender if I hadn't gotten to expressing my sexuality, and I wouldn't have gotten to that if I hadn't accepted being, you know, culturally diverse, and all of these things stacked up on top of each other, and all of it also led to the realization of being a system. And the way that it stacked up, it was just kind of like the perfect reveal. if I like if it was a movie, then you would have gotten the hint that it was going there, but then when it happened, you're just like, oh, okay, that makes sense. Like that's what it felt like.
Yeah, it's like when there's foreshadowing, but you don't notice until like you watch it for the second time.
Yeah, you look back and you're like, oh, this was like from minute one they were alluding to this, and you're like,
yeah, I can definitely think of a few movies that are like that. It's like, oh, they set this up from the first scene.
Yeah, that's really what it felt like. I came out to my mom as, at the time, bisexual, because that's all I had the terms for, at 13, when I found out that one of my favorite family members who had passed was gay. And that was like a huge mind-blowing moment. It made sense when I thought back on it, because like he passed away when I was fairly young, but he was literally, to this day, still one of my favorite people on earth. And when my mom was like, yeah, there was tension in the family because, you know, he was gay and we're Jehovah's Witnesses. And I was just like, well, that means that's fine for me. Like, what is all of this? If he was the best person on the planet, then there's nothing wrong with being gay, because he was the best person on the planet. And that was like the moment that I was just like, well, that's me. I am also, yes, I'm also on the spectrum there. And then later on, I found pansexuality, and I was like, this fits better for me. I don't know why. Like at the time, I was like, I don't know why, but this it feels more comfortable. And then that moved on to, you know, later down on the line, I did the really enthusiastic trans ally route of finding myself, because the person I call my adopted kid is trans, and I was like there 100%. I was like, I swear I will fight the world for this person. And I was just like, things that he's saying are resonating with me, but it's not. I was like, but I don't feel happy as my AGAB, and I don't think I'd feel happy if I was born as the other AGAB. I was like, so obviously I'm not trans. And then I found the terms for non-binary and the whole spectrum, and not just one or the other, and went, oh, that makes sense. That's where I am, is this middle ground where it encompasses all of it. And I don't know why, but like, that's what it feels like. And which, you know, led later on to it was maybe a month or two after accepting that I was non-binary that we got diagnosed as a system. And it was the perfect lead up. It was like, you've got you're gender diverse, your sexuality is diverse. I came out as polyamorous. It's like perfect setup. You're this.
Yeah. Well, it's like none of these things like develop in isolation. I mean, we were chatting about this like in the pre-show where it's like, oh, it'd be nice to have like, switch to have like to switch from like physical issues to mental issues. But like even within, the overall umbrella of like what's going on in our heads, like it's not like there are things that are happening in isolation. It's all interconnected. It's all intersectional. So you can't consider one part of your identity while ignoring everything else. So I'm really glad that you had the space to kind of explore all of that. And when you bring up like learning the words for things, I mean, that's something that we've talked about a lot on this show, where it's like, it's like I'm kind of this, but like that's not quite the right word. It doesn't quite feel right. And then you learn a new word. It's like, oh yes, that's what I am. So there's kind of the danger of having these labels be prescriptive instead of descriptive. And what I mean by that is like people, I would say this is a lot more common among people who aren't, gender diverse or sexually diverse or whatnot. They like to use these labels to put us into boxes, but really these labels help us to kind of explore our own identities and kind of understand ourselves better. So I'm glad that you were able to find all of that. I just realized I've been talking for a long time. So
yeah,
it's okay. I was like eating almonds and taking my meds and running around. I promise I was listening though, because these headphones go with me everywhere. So let's switch topics and talk a little more about DID and identity. Crossroads system. When did you all realize or figure out that you were plural?
So that's everything's complicated answers, but officially it was around 26 or 7, I think, was official diagnosis. Before that, there were some really, really like hit you in the face signs, and for my entire life, there was a point in time where I knew something was going on, and I was literally begging therapists to take me seriously, and I was just like, I don't know what is happening, but something is happening, and it was just we got met with dismissiveness and all of that, and so that pushed us off on, like, we call it like the firm discovery, because we made sure that we can't forget it again, because between within our life we've known and then forgotten several times, and it's not like you forget and it's gone. It's always there and nagging in a certain way, but like you forget that or it's hard to describe. The dissociative amnesia is a wild thing to experience.
Sounds like the knowledge or wisdom is suppressed.
Yeah. It's like, something's going on, there's somebody standing over your shoulder, but you do not want to turn around to like acknowledge that. And that's what it felt like. And that is with me at 18. I've had a lot of troubles and stuff. And there was one period of time where we were struggling really hard with anger issues due to just trauma and suppressed emotions and all of that other stuff. And it was getting bad. It was getting to the point where we sat there and we looked ahead and we're just like, if we continue going the way that we are going to hate everybody around us, and we're going to hate ourselves. And I'm like, and I don't want to do that. Like I've seen that happen in my family, and I don't want to be that person, because that's the reason I'm angry in the first place. And so we brought our mom, like we asked our mom to take us out of the house. We haven't driven much in our lives, and so that was one of the times where our mom was driving us around, and we're just like, look, we took her to a park we've never been to before in our town. We sat in this little patch of grass, not even in the park, but like the median in between the road and the parking lot. We're like, we need to be outside in a place that we aren't normally to have a conversation. And we just looked at her and we're just like, look, I'm angry, and I hate the way that I am, and I hate the world right now, and I can't keep doing this. And like, so I want to let you know I've looked down the road, and this is actually where our system name comes from, and we didn't get to choose it. It just was, is in this conversation, we looked at our mom and we're like, we're at a crossroads. We can continue on the path that we're on, and that I'm on, and end up being bitter and a person I do not want to be, or I can just choose to be a different person. And I want to let you know that I'm choosing to be better, and I won't have these, like, I'm not going to have these issues anymore, and I'm going to seem different, and I just want you to know that I'm okay. And I'm like, and we're okay, and it's all okay, but I wanted to let you know before I made this decision. And then we left the park, and my mom was confused about that for a couple of years, but just let it go. And literally from the moment that we left the park, looking back, we now know it was a host change, and somebody was just passing over the reins, and we had the moment of clarity that we did to let our mom know, hey, the giant personality change that you're about to see, we're fine. And from that moment till now, we haven't struggled with those anger issues or self-loathing that we had been at the time. And that was honestly a blessing, because we were heading down a dark road, and like, thankfully our system had the ability to just be like, we're changing direction.
Now that's incredible. I mean, it takes a lot of guts to do that, especially at like such a young age. Because I mean, I know from personal experience, like when you live your whole life angry at yourself and at the world, it's really hard to let that go. So
Yeah.
I'm proud of you for doing that. Like that's honestly, that's incredible. So
that's one of the first conscious introductions to our system, like where we knew something was going on, and the language that we used was so far removed from the language that we used to use at the time, or even the language we use now. And that's one of the things that's always stood out to me. And then when we found out about being plural, about DID, we're just like, oh, that conversation makes sense now.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, it's funny how like we look back on our like, major formative moments, and it's like things only make sense with the benefit of hindsight. So but yeah, speaking of DID, our main topic here, how would you say that DID has played a role in your relationship to your identity?
It definitely influences it. It makes it harder in some ways, because we do not agree on most things, like as a system. There's a lot of us, and we all have our own likes, dislikes, personal sense of self, all of that, which can make things a little messy. And it made the decision to transition and where we wanted to go with our transition a little bit trickier, because it wasn't just one person going, this is where I want to be, and this is how I want to present to the world. We had to do a lot of self-checking and a lot of work with our therapist to work with the headmates that we don't have as good a communication with. And, whether it was writing it down, telling our therapist, texting ourselves, all of that, we had to make sure that like a majority vote was okay with physically transitioning, because that's where our host at the time was headed. And we came to the conclusion, like, yes, that's what we want to do. We were having a lot of health issues tied to things that were going to go into our transition anyway. And every step of the way, we were making sure this is what we want to do. It's not for one person, it's for the whole system. And those who might not align physically with what we're doing don't have a problem with what we're doing. And like, it's a lot of back and forth, and it's a lot of round table discussions and or note leaving everywhere. But that made it a little, that made it tricky for the physical part, but like the individual senses of self, it's one of the reasons why non-binary is such a great descriptor for us, because I don't have to explain to everybody at any given point in time, like right now I'm feeling masculine, now I'm feeling feminine, now I'm somewhere in the void in the middle, I'm all of it, I'm none of it, as it changes. We can just go, oh, I'm non-binary, and that'll cover it for the most part. And then if we need to get into it more, then we'll get into it more.
Now, it's like gender fluid. Is that a term that you identify with as well?
Yeah, it goes back and forth depending on the terminology we use, depending on who we're talking to. If it's the gender diverse or queer community, then we'll get into like specifics and be like, oh, we're gender fluid, or we're masculine leaning trans. Like we'll get into like the specific labels. But if it's people outside of the queer community, or like people who aren't used to the terminology and stuff, and we don't want to go into like explaining all the differences for a simple word.
Yeah, no, that's the move.
We'll
it's like
non-binary.
I don't want this to be a 20-minute conversation. So I get that.
Yeah, and then especially with the fluctuating presentation, we're just like gender fluid or non-binary are the good over terms for physically overall, and then individually we each have our own sense of self. And like there's a lot of people in our system that identify as trans masc. There are a lot of headmates that just identify as being male or being cis, which is wild. Having cis headmates in a trans system is a wild experience.
I can't even imagine.
And it gets a little complicated, and we do have several girls in our system, or several femme presenting or identifying people in our system, but they all do not care about our physical, like how we physically look, as long as they can wear their clothes.
Now, I mean, this is kind of segues into our next question. How would you say the DID has affected how you've approached your gender transition?
I think it made me a little bit more cautious than if it had been like one of us been like, yep, like that's where I want to be, that's where I'm going. But we've had to, because I do have femme presenting headmates and we live in an AFAB body, we wanted to make sure we were doing things respectfully, and that the more masculine or trans headmates weren't just bulldozing over anybody who identified with the body. But even our femme headmates don't identify with how we look right now or how we looked before. They have their very own unique appearances, and they don't tie that to how we look out here. Like this is just the sim that we inhabit, and we all have our own ways of looking like in our system, and we don't fuss too much about the differences individually between us. We just like, this is a group project, and then we have our individual selves.
Okay, but in group projects, there's like the person who does 80% of the work, and then there's like a bunch of freeloaders, and then there's the person who feels bad that they freeloaded, so then they present it, but they don't know what they're talking about because they didn't do all the research.
I mean,
that's pretty accurate.
That's definitely been my experience, like going through academics. So I built up a lot of goodwill with group projects of me being one of the few people doing all the work. And then I remember getting to a certain point of the semester where it's like, I'm too busy to do this project. I literally can't do anything. You guys are doing all the work.
I'm going to out one of my system mates here, but that's what happened to our host, one of our co-hosts, Andy. They were just vibing in the system, and our previous host, Pan, got tired of hosting and dealing with all of the medical stuff, and specifically had stuff to do in our system that they just wanted to get back to. And Andy's initiation into hosting was literally one of our headmates going, you should come this way, and then being locked in the front room and just like, this is your job now. You haven't done this at all. It's your turn.
Relatable. So how does being plural or DID influence your art or other hobbies? Do you have different headmates with different hobbies? If you find you're doing one art or craft versus some other hobby, are you like, oh, this is who's fronting? Like, yeah.
Yeah, so it definitely affects, just like everything else, it affects everything. But our art and our writing, there's definitely some places that you can start picking people out. I also think that that's one of, like, it ties in with the ADHD, like the ADHD urge to have a bit of every type of art there is, or every type of like art medium, just because you might want to try this or that. The system just ties in with that perfectly. And we have, like, for years, we only ever did acrylic painting because that's what our family does. And I have a stack over like on the corner, like this high of acrylic paintings. Then we had a host switch, and we have not touched acrylics in about a year and a half. Instead, we have marker, we have pencils, we have gouache. We just got currently AJ am into watercolor, and gel gouache is like my new favorite thing. And the art styles and subjects in between all of our art is wildly different. I have some examples everywhere, but like one of our headmates that doesn't front very often likes to do acrylics on figures, which is not something that I like doing because it's messy and it takes time and patience. Actually, I don't have any of that. But like we have okay, it is show. We have this little guy that we got like on sale at Hot Topic. This is what it's not going to show up because it's supposed to be green, but it was one of the Cryptians off of like from Hot Topic. They had a sale, like they were just selling out of their inventory, and we took as many as we could. And like this was one of the first ones. The person who wanted it ended up backing out, but they wanted a trans flag that was low key, and so it's done completely in trans colors.
Oh yeah, I see it. Yeah.
And it's got a little trans flag on the tail, but it's hard to see.
Oh, that's so cute. I love it.
So that just lives in my house now. Like I have that, and then I have a Nessie that's painted like an orca, and like a few others that headmate did, but they will not put their name on it. So that's a problem, is like people claiming their stuff. And then we have like we'll have people who do like pencil and stuff on. It's not going to show. There we go. It's not great. It's not great visual, but like just trying to show like the variety. This one I think was pan because they do hyper detailed stuff when they can. Yeah. See if that'll. The green screen also. I know.
We're trying.
This one, the tan paper with the pencil it's not high contrast, so I was expecting it to kind of. And then this is stuff that I did with our gel gouache when we just got it. Oh no!
Oh, I can kind of make it out. Yes. All right, we're gonna try to turn off the green screen, see if that makes a difference.
Okay. Sorry, I'm still technologically challenged, so it's gonna.
That's okay.
Okay. Excuse the background, but.
Oh, there we go. Perfect.
This is the gel gouache that I did the first time. I love this gouache. It was the first time I tried the I think it's HIMI. I don't know how to pronounce that, but gouache. I love it. It is my new obsession. And awesome. I wanted to show. I actually have something specific that has to do with art and our system. So this is actually, I don't know if we'll be able to see it. The light is a little bright too. This right here is actually a snapshot of our inner world. This one was done by Andy in watercolor. And it's far from the first time we've painted it, but as opposed to this was mine in gouache. And what we like about specifically this, like this is one of like the intro points into our system, is we all have an obsession with drawing this area, which is based off of a real place, with some not real, like some system stuff intermixed with it. But we all have an obsession with drawing it. We usually don't draw one subject over and over and over again, but we have like 16 different iterations in different art styles and different mediums of the same little like field. This is somebody else's that they didn't put their name on it. But like, and then we have, and then there's this one. It's there's more on this one than I know about, so I'm not sure how much this has been worked on. But we have like pencil and watercolor and acrylic, all of these same schemes, which are something we're all pretty familiar with. And then it's one of the things that showed us how different our art styles were from each other, because we're all drawing the same thing, but and you can tell everything's in the same place, but the style and the way that we go about it is so different. Some of us are literally just like stick figure it, but it works.
Yeah, the chat's really loving your art, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
I mean, I'm very impressed with this kind of stuff because, like, I mean, I draw like a baboon, so like, like, my brain literally it's like, how do you do that? Are you a sorcerer? Like, what?
So with my own system, like, there's one headmate that only does our iPad, and like, here's something they just did. They got a commission for Pokemon Fusion, which is one of half of us love to do them, half of us are really bad at doing them, but we love to do them. This I think it was me and Angel. They did, it was Ampharos and Haunter, which Haunter is one of our favorite ones to cross anybody with, and this is how it turned out. And
that's awesome.
There are other people in our system that will look at this and be like, where the hell did that come from? Because I could not do that if I tried. Or we'll do a couple and they'll turn out really nice, and then somebody will be like, all right, peace, I'm out. And then we'll still have art to do, and then it'll come out. It's not bad, it just isn't the style we're trying for.
Yes.
And so we'll just be like, that's awful, that's bad, we need to not do that again. And then we'll look back and we're like, okay, it's not actually that bad, it wasn't who we thought was drawing. And like, we do for fun, we'll do like terminology OCs of like, in like the style of Hell of a Boss, because that's something that's system like related, and we like to create those for people, and we like the information people give us to create a character that feels like them. And Angel specifically will do those because that's their thing, like that they love helping like realize OCs, or specifically we'll do them for systems and like try to get stuff for other systems to like make them feel seen, because we don't get photos of ourselves. We can get art for ourselves, but we never get like, we can't like snap a selfie and be like, that is definitely me. And that could be hard. And so we'll do these OCs for people every once in a while, and every once in a while they'll come out where you're just like, that's the person that I know, like that's my friend in that system, I see them. And then sometimes Angel won't be there, and we'll try, and we'll just be like, I don't know what that is. We're gonna push that over to the side for now.
So if you're just tuning in, we are here with the Crossroads system, where we have AJ fronting, I believe, right now. And we are talking about DID and their experiences with their gender. So welcome back. So what is your experience with headmates who have differing or competing gender identities or sexualities or relationship styles? We kind of touched upon that a little bit more, but would you like to elaborate more on that?
So we think there would have been a little bit more fighting in the beginning if the way that we like came to know ourselves had differed. But like, we started off recognizing that we were bi, pan early on, and that led for a diverse expression of who we like and who we find attractive, and that was easy. And then like, at times we would notice we lean more, towards one aesthetic versus another, and it would always be completely disconnected for like the type of person. And then same thing with our physical expression. There would be times like, before, when we were younger, it was the whole depressed emo hoodie all the time like look, because we didn't want putting effort into how we looked was tedious, because we weren't comfortable.
Oh boy, I can relate.
Like, it was like the trans and then the DID stuff, it links really heavily. And so yeah, we had a whole point where we're just like cartoon character, we're like, if they can just wear the same thing like every day, then why can't we have like 3 or 4 versions of the same thing, and we just do that, we don't have to worry about it. Yeah. And we did that for a while. And
Just
then
do the whole Einstein thing where you have like 5 or 6 copies of the same outfit.
we were talking about this a little bit on the break, but it wasn't until we got into cosplaying that we started caring about how we were presenting and looking and how that made us feel, because cosplay was one of the first times where we were just like, wow, this feels better. And like we didn't recognize it at first. At first it was like, this is really fun and I want to put like so much time and energy and like get a little bit obsessive about this. And then that led into the, maybe this is bigger than cosplay. And that led into the whole like touching into when we found the terms for non-binary, that changed into, well, we'd already cut our hair for cosplay. Like I said, like commitment, that was just commitment to the cosplay because the wigs didn't look right. And so we cut our hair short for the first time for the cosplay. And then realized, hey, that felt way better. And we felt more comfortable in cosplay than we did out. And then we started slowly changing our wardrobe and how we presented outside to align more with what made us have those good feels. And yeah, it was a wild ride. And then for the masculine headmates, that's where that came in. We just were like, this is us being seen for the first time. And now that we are more masculine presenting, we have to balance that out with the femme headmates that we do have. Our system works in a way, and we're really fortunate that we don't fight for the front very often. And our femme headmates in particular are so done with everybody's crap that they don't come around very often. They come around for very specific people or very specific situations that they like, things that they want to do. And other than that, they're just like, I don't have time for this, and I don't have time for I don't have time for it. But when they do, like we actually have we have a dresser over on our far wall here. We have a hanging closet over here, and the styles are like, we have all our femme clothes that we felt like keeping over here. And we have a section specifically for one of our headmates, because before our transition, their style was so vastly different from the rest of us that when they were buying their clothes was one of the moments where my mom was like, oh, you really have this, like this is wild.
Oh yeah,
because we had never, like, we rarely wore colors, and we were very anti-pink most of our life. And then at the time, they don't mind me using their old name. At the time, our headmate was going by Alicia, and she was the epitome of pink. Like pink hair, pink clothes, pink everything. Like to the point where we came out the first time with her fronting, and she like lace front wig, all of that dressed up. And my mom was like, oh my God, what the heck is going on? And like she was like, I understand, but like seeing it is different. And I'm like, looking back at the photos of her feeling like herself, even in an AFAB body for the first time, that was her feeling like herself, is wild. Like you can see the difference in us even back then. And through our transition, Alicia actually has transitioned to Ash, and every once in a while we'll go back and forth, and they don't care if they were referred to either, because that's them. And they love showing off their older photos and how much work they put into their look. And now they're trying to figure out how to do so in like their new, more masculine field. Like when they want to be femme, we got all that, but there aren't really any good short hair lace front wigs. It's literally one of their biggest like pet peeves, is that they don't have the nice hair that they had when they want it long. They don't have it when they want it short.
Yeah. No, I think I saw the pictures on our Discord. Y'all should join our Discord, by the way. It's really great. But yeah, that's really interesting how like that's really interesting how you can have like different aspects of your personality or like different headmates. have their go through their own transitions and have their own kind of journeys with their own like gender expression. So it's
gender,
it's really
sexuality,
interesting
all of it.
to hear you talk about that.
And like you think that would get easier the more that you do. Like we have headmates, and you'd think that it would get easier, and it never does. Every once in a while, somebody new will pop up, and we'll just be like, okay, what's going on here? All over again. It's literally just am I polyamorous? Am I monogamous? Am I straight? Am I gay? All over again. And I mean, usually the baseline is I'm gay. Do I also like the opposite sex? And then that's their thing. For some reason, our baseline in our system is everybody's queer.
That's a good place to start.
It is a great place to start. I'm gonna turn my green screen off real quick just because Ash, when you call, they'll come and they want to show off their favorite photo. Let me make sure I have the right one that they're talking about because they are very particular. And if I show the wrong one, I will get yelled at for the next few hours. I think it's this one because they look very bougie. Let me say, sorry, still trying to figure out how to work this. So this is
good.
I don't know. This is the problem I have with trying to show things off of one screen to another. I don't know if you can see that.
I can sort of make it out.
Or Ash has long, maybe blonde hair, and then a little hat.
It's strawberry pink. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, you're right. It is strawberry. So strawberry pink hair. Is there also pink lipstick?
Yeah, everything is pink. They were head to toe just pink, including doing our nails. And then their compromise, because the nail polish stayed on for so long, was I can't remember if it was all pink with one black nail on each hand or if they did the opposite. It just depends on how long they were going to front. There was a short period in time where we weren't sure if Pan was going to host or Ash was going to host, and that led to a very confusing time for our at the time partner, because every once in a while we'd show up and we'd be a little more masculine leaning and being like, yeah, this is us, and then the next time we'd show up dripping in pink, super femme, very Ash's voice at the time was much higher than ours, even pre-T. Like they would pitch our voice up even higher and do like they just completely different person from everything about them. Like they have some videos still somewhere on our phone, and every once in a while when I have the ability to deal with that, the headache that causes sometimes watching videos of ourselves, we'll play Ashes and we'll just be like, I don't know who that is. Like, I mean, like, I know, like, it looks like, oh, that's my friend. But, like, physically, we realize it's all us. But looking at those photos, I don't see me. I'm just like, that's my friend. Like, that's Ash. That's awesome. Like, that's them then, and this is them now. And it's weird having that kind of relationship with yourself at times, where you can look back and you're just like, that's me, but it's not.
Yeah, and I think that like that's not necessarily limited to people with the ID. I think kind of every trans person has that relationship with their former selves. I mean, we all kind of conceptualize it in different ways. I mean, I know some people out there will be like, oh, that's my twin brother or twin sister that's no longer with us, or that sort of thing. So that's it's interesting to see that happen in multiplicity within one person. I did want to touch back on something that you brought up really quickly and kind of pull on a thread. And now you do not have to answer this question because it might be a little too personal, but this is something that like I've always been really curious about with folks who are plural, on how that affects their relationships. So that's something that like I imagine complicates things quite a lot. So like how do you navigate that? You know, it's like, what do you do if like one part of your system like wants to date someone but another part doesn't, or like I honestly don't know how it works. So like you don't have to satisfy my curiosity, but this is something I've always wondered about.
It definitely gets complicated, and in the beginning it was very complicated. Before we knew something was going on, and because of being dismissed by our therapist at the time, we went through a couple of years where we turned to metaphysics for answers instead of instead of looking for something more internal or personal. We were just like, okay, the voices, they said that it's not A, B, and C, and they didn't give us any other options. So it has to be like a guide or a spirit or, something like that. Because at the time, our most prominent voice was just an asshole who narrated our life all the time because he was bored and stuck. And so it would just be like, and they're reaching for the drink, and like, or just be like, why in the hell are you with this person? And like, just all the time. And so that made the relationship that we had been in at the time hard. We were in a 11-year monogamous relationship before we found out for sure about the DID. We started finding out about polyamory towards the end of that relationship. That like there was a lot of bad stuff. Oh, I'm sorry. I just realized my green screen isn't on. There we go. There was a lot of contention in that relationship anyway, and several of our headmates were trying to find an out because they weren't the host, and unfortunately that meant they had pretty limited control over what was happening. It's actually one of the reasons why our system like came out completely to ourselves. But it gets complicated because our headmate Adeline had a relationship with somebody before we knew we were a system, before our partner knew that they were a system, while we were in a monogamous relationship. So it got really messy because we didn't know that was going on. And it was all through roleplay writing. They had built a whole world with somebody else, and it was every single day, almost from the time that we would wake up to the time we went to bed, that she would be writing with this person. And they'd be having conversations, going on dates, going on it was just a story that kept unfolding, and it was very much I'm not writing this, it's writing itself. And like it was, at the time it felt addicting. Like it was because she was getting to express herself for the very first time in a way that was healthy for her, and she felt seen. And because of that, our former partner was very against the idea of us writing, and at one point in time told us, you can still RP and you can still write, but you can't write as Adeline. And that literally felt like somebody had stabbed us in the chest. We felt like we were dying, and in the middle of an 11-year relationship where we had shown that we were going to be committed to that like until the day we died, if that's what he had wanted, whether it was healthier for us or not. That was the moment that we were just like, it's over, we're done, I can't do this. And he backtracked, and it went on a little longer than it should have, like with the back and forth. He had brought up that maybe we could be polyamorous, and then kept backtracking, and then we found out he'd been cheating the whole time, and we're just like, okay, this is too much, we're done, we're out. And when we left, we found out that our writing partner, we talked with them for 2.5 years in character, never breaking. This is Adeline talking to their partner for 2.5 years. That should have been a sign, but it was not. We were just like, no, this is just something we do on the side. Like it's something that we're always doing, but it's just like, it's for fun. And then we started finally talking to our partner, like other parts of our system started talking to our partner, and we got to know each other, in a different way. And we were talking to them while they were going through the process of being diagnosed. And then we jumped on that enthusiastic ally bandwagon again. We're like, we're going to learn every single thing about this so we can like be there and support you in this thing that we've never heard of before. And like their introduction to us for the diagnosis was, hey, the person that you've been writing with, like they're real, like that's somebody in our system. And we had to do a lot of research and look it up, and we're like, oh, okay. Like that would explain why writing with other people who are writing a character felt so different and so off. It felt like the difference between somebody playing a character and somebody being someone. And like it's a really hard thing to describe in the writing, and it's so important. And like so when we found that out, we did the whole deep dive. We read peer-reviewed articles. We ended up buying the handbook that went into writing the section in the DSM for dissociative disorders, and reading through that, we started following other dissociative systems, all of that, and then it was hearing somebody else say, I know that I'm not, but I just joke with my therapist that I was low-key haunted, and they got really concerned. And that had been something that I've been saying for about 5 to 7 years at that point. Was, I know it's like I don't believe in ghosts, but I'm low-key haunted. Like stuff just happens around me, and I'm like, I'm sure that it's me, but I don't remember doing it, so it's low-key haunted. And that person said that thing, and I was like, oh no. And like it all started to click together. And which led us to the realization that our original character, our writing character, our writing persona, Adeline, the reason that it felt like she was dying when we were told that we couldn't acknowledge her anymore was because she was there, and she was a very real part of us. And she has been out and having a relationship and a partner for the last 7 years now, which is longer than we have been diagnosed or had even known that she was who she was. And like looking back now with our partner system, we're like, yeah, they knew before we did. And like when we came back and told our partner, hey, I think that we're dealing with this too, and then a little later was like, I think Adeline might be a headmate, their response was, oh, thank God, it's taking you so freaking long. like I was waiting for my girl, like, I want you to acknowledge my girlfriend, but I also didn't want to just tell you, hey, like, this is happening. And then that led us to like fully accept being polyamorous, which led us to be like accepting being non-binary and trans, which led us to diagnosis. And the order one of us has our order mixed up in there. They were all connected. And so polyamory is so tied into our gender identity and being plural that like Adeline considers herself more or less monogamous to her partner. She has very little interest in literally anybody else in the world, other than interacting with them in their system. And whereas we have other headmates who are like, we span the whole identity spectrum sexuality spectrum from aro ace to pansexual, and then hypersexual, and it gets wild because there are people in our system that do not like some of our partners. Like they just straight up do not want to be around them. And so we just give them time where they're like, okay, here is your time by yourself, not around the people. Enjoy yourself. We have an introject, and we say he's aggressively aro ace because he doesn't enjoy people talking to him. And so if anybody tries to talk to him and flirt with him, he gets very angry. He's just like, no. And then because he's an introject, unfortunately, there's a lot of fan created art and stuff around him being with other people, and it just is so uncomfortable. He gets violently angry when that stuff comes, because sometimes people will send it to us because they know that he's introjected, and it's just he's like, it feels like a violation. Like I would never be in those situations. And some of those people are in our system, and he's like, and I sure as hell wouldn't be in those situations with that person. And it's like somebody sending you a photo of yourself in a situation you don't remember or you would never consent to, and it's like it can feel so wrong, even though he understands like this is a fandom and people are just enjoying and like expressing their love for the source material, and like he isn't his source material, but like that is how he sees himself, and it gets complicated. Like
I can imagine,
it's
like finding a deep fake of yourself. It's like, ooh,
it really is.
I don't know how to feel about this.
Even those of us that aren't introjects and just have our own unique personal views of ourselves, we can feel like that about ourselves. Like Ash is hypersexual and is one of a few headmates that are hypersexual, and they for a short period of time were running a adult site that the rest of us weren't actually aware of for a while. And we stumbled upon those photos and we were just like, what in the hell is going on here? And like it was a whole sit down conversation with the system going, okay, so where do the headmates that aren't comfortable with doing that kind of stuff or being seen in that kind of way, where is their boundary versus the headmates that do want to do this kind of stuff and are fine with being proud of themselves and how they look. And that was a hard conversation that took a very long time to have. And we've come to like, now there's like just situations where certain headmates just will not be mentioned in certain situations. And that's our boundary with them. And there are certain headmates that are the only ones that want to deal with certain people in certain situations. And like that goes with our committed relationships, because we have several committed partners who are in relationships with either a lot of us or just some of us. And then we have our group that's either arrow ace or just arrow or just ace, and they interact with people differently. Like one of our headmates, it has no interest in romantic relationships. They only want to do friends with benefits, when the majority of our system isn't keen on casual encounters.
Yeah.
So we've had to come up with boundaries and agreements on how they can express themselves in a way that doesn't make them uncomfortable, because they will not do anything with our partners. They do not want to touch or be around anybody we have a romantic connection with. They only want somebody who's like on like if they want to go to a movie, hang out, be friends, that's fine. But if they have like romantic feelings for us, that cancels them out immediately for those headmates. They're just like, no, thank you. And like it's been hard, and like especially because the culture around hookups is different, and like somebody wants, if they want us on demand, that's not going to happen. Those headmates come around occasionally, and they just want somebody there when they're around, and not somebody who's going to be like, hey, so I'm ready for this, because then they're going to hit one of our ace headmates, because most of our hosts are ace leaning, and we're going to be like, no, thank you. Different time, maybe.
I can imagine that. I mean, I can imagine that's also difficult for your partners.
It can, I say thankfully, but it kind of, just like a lot of like, neurodivergent and queer people tend to like flock together. Before I even knew it, the people who were surrounding me were all also systems before I realized it. Like when first it was my partner who came out who got diagnosed. Then it was me. And then I had posted something in a DID group, and 3 people off of my friends list were just like, I am also in this group because, hi, I am also this way. And I'm just like, that's a lot of people in my more or less immediate vicinity. Like, I mean, we're all Facebook friends, and so like it's great distances, but like we all still flocked together. And there was like there's like that beacon light where you're just like, there's something about this person that like vibes with me on a different level. And then it turns out we were all systems. And so I think 4 out of my 5 partners are all diagnosed systems now. And so it makes it easier in some ways, and it makes it extremely more difficult in others.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that.
Like there's stuff that we don't have to explain. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to ask a different question, so you go ahead.
Oh, it's okay. I lost it. I was going to go on another rant, so it's fine.
I was going to ask if the headmates in your system have any like agreements about things that the vessel won't do, no matter who's fronting. Because, like, for example, if the vessel goes to jail, everyone goes to jail, right?
Yeah.
Like, not just whoever was fronting, like everybody. So, like, yeah, I'm curious if you all have ever had a conversation about any of that, or if it's just sort of globally understood and that's obvious, or
So that leads into a little bit of trauma, but we have I'm afraid like one of the cool things about DID, one of the things that is interesting is there are certain conditions that we have that are system wide. We are all autistic, we are all ADHD, we all have Tourette's, even though that might manifest to a different level for each of us. But those are things that affect the brain and the body, and like they're universal, whether or not I say we show, but certain headmates are better at masking than other headmates, and that's just a fact. Some of them were born out of a necessity to mask, and therefore they can't show the autistic traits the way that the rest of us do. Then there are certain mental health things that you can have that are exclusive to specific headmates. And that's where it starts to get really complicated. Like, our depression is held by about 5 of our headmates are specifically the ones that have a diagnosis of persistent depressive disorder and major depressive disorder. And it's only them. And then we also have a headmate who is diagnosed ASPD. And they're the one that came to the decision that there were, when it comes, because you brought up jail, that there are certain things in their words that aren't worth our time. And it's hard to describe the way that they articulate because it's so foreign to the rest of us. But their job in our system was created because of a lot of trauma and a lot of bad situations, and specifically a situation where, when we were younger, where we didn't have the capacity to deal with what we were dealing with, and we had to make some hard decisions that could have put everybody in danger in our system. And they're very analytical. Emotion doesn't play into their decision making at all. And they're very apathetic, but not in a way, not in a derogatory way. Them feeling what other people feel doesn't play into their decisions. And they have a lot of comments on the use of apathy in our culture that I won't get into because it gets a little spicy on their end. But even just bridging the gap in our own system for that, because the way that they talk and feel and express themselves is so different. It's like speaking a different language. But because of that, we were able to come to agreements certain, like I said, it's their way of saying it, but certain things aren't worth our time. They would be the most likely to do one thing or another that would lead us to trouble. They're one of the people who's a little more likely to do that. And they came to the realization on their own that it's not worth it, just because. And that helped open up the dialogue for our system, where we're just like, okay, there are certain things that have, global ramifications for our system, where like you said, if we end up in jail, that's everybody. That's not just the person who did it, that's everyone. And that's a lot of time. And even with transitioning, we're like, this is going to be a global decision. This is going to be a decision that affects every single person that inhabits this space. And it was just along those lines where we're just like, is this something that we're all willing to do, or is this something that 1 or 2 people is pushing for, and it's actually going to be a bad decision in the long run? And it took a long time to come to those agreements. And other than the big societal things that would be like, hey, don't do that, which that's just universally understood in our system. There's just certain things that people don't do. There isn't when it comes to interpersonal relationships, or even sexuality and expressing that kind of stuff, there isn't lines that one headmate would be like, I would like to do this or explore this, and another one would be like, oh, well, I'm not interested in that and all. We have to find a middle ground. Our understanding with our system is we have to find our middle ground, or the people who don't want to be present can go inner world deep if they want to while we're doing that. And or if there's a switch in the middle of doing something, or being with somebody, or hanging out with a person, we can just be like, okay, we need to end this activity now. And unfortunately, that's a lot of pre-conversations to any situation that we're in, because we have to inform anybody that we're with about our condition, and have basically a 2-hour conversation on what that even means to people who don't know about DID, before we can even be like, I would like to hold your hand.
Maybe you can send them this podcast next time, and then you don't have to do so much explaining. Watch this. Let me know what questions you have.
I'm sorry. I think I hit your.
You did great.
We got a little wobbly there, but I think we
it's okay.
circled back.
Well, and I thank you for letting me know that the part of the answer gets close to some trauma that you have. I don't want to traipse into your trauma non-consensually. So I appreciate you answering at all. Yeah, it's so interesting thinking about, like, if you feel like there's more to say about how your system came to the decision to formally transition. It looks like you have probably medically done some transitioning, is my guess, because I think I might see some scruff growing here.
Yeah.
So anyway, so how do you reconcile those varying identities versus the overall sense of self that you share with the world?
Therapy is a big part of it. We've been in therapy since we were 12 or 13, on and off. And while a lot of it hasn't been helpful, a lot of it has given us coping strategies, even if the therapist at the time wasn't presenting them in a way that could benefit us. We've been able to incorporate that, and then now we have a therapist that we trust a lot. He's been amazing for us, who sees each of us as an individual and helps bridge the gap between us, and has helped us have conversations and facilitate conversations in between headmates that do have trouble communicating. Because while we know we have a long list of headmates we do know about, we know for a fact there's a whole world we don't in our system. And but the best that we can do is everybody who's active and fronting and wants to have an input in it. And that looked like I think a year or a year and a half of just talking about the options, and then weighing that in with the other health concerns we were having, because like we're on testosterone, and we have had top surgery and a hysterectomy, and they weren't. I don't want to say they were hard decisions, but they also weren't easy because of the varying identities, and because we do have femme headmates. The masculine presenting headmates were actually more worried about taking steps to medically transition and in fear of overshadowing our feminine presenting headmates than our feminine presenting headmates were cared at all about being involved in the process. We were just like, are you sure? Are you sure? Are you sure? Okay, yeah. But are you sure? And like, I'm happy that it went that way, because they got annoyed, and they were just at the point they were just like, just do it. Stop asking, just do it. And also, like, not that it's great that it was tying into other medical problems, but every surgery and everything that we've done has tied into other medical problems that we have. And we joke that our entire like physical body was like leaning towards being trans anyway, because our chest was disordered. We had congenital somastia, so we actually have a knot of like scar tissue in the center of our chest that was just there from having the chest that we had, and it was causing back problems. It was causing scoliosis. It was adding to our pain issues so much, and then on top of that, we are starting to worry about the tissue itself was starting to have issues. And so when it came to top surgery, the girls in our system were just like, we can get a like what they use in cosplay, like we can get a fake chest to put on when we want to, like that's fine. Yeah. And then the histo, we had known we didn't want children our entire life, because we know that we'll never be in a place to give somebody the amount of attention and care that they need when we're still trying to do that for ourselves. And so that was a decision we had made that decision at 6. Like that's one of our first memories was talking to our mom and joking, or not joke, like literally we were serious. Like when we're an adult, we want to adopt an older kid, because we don't want to have one. And that was one of the first conversations my mom and I had about us growing up and having a family. And that was very, very young. And then, so when we hit 18 to 20s, we'd known that we wanted to get sterilized. At first, we ended up getting a tubal ligation way before we knew we were a system. And we were still having so many problems. And we ended up getting diagnosed with PCOS in our 20s. after getting our tubes tied, because they wouldn't allow us to do anything else at the time. And even that, there was a whole hassle. And then after the PCOS diagnosis, they were, our doctors were telling us we were having estrogen imbalance issues, and we already had tied testosterone. I was talking to our trans friends, and some of our trans friends were just like, you're already like dealing with most of the beginning stages of what we were what we do on testosterone. And that was the moment we're just like, so we're getting on that. We already know what it's like. We already started. We're getting on that. And then that led to our histo, and we found out through our histo that a good chunk of our pain was PCOS and endometriosis. And so taking that out helped immensely. Like, we started not cycling. It was once every 3 months, but that was a lot for us. We started feeling like a human being, because anytime we cycled, our depression and our disconnect with ourself was just through the roof. And it would be weeks of being like, I just want to get back to being myself. And so that was an easier decision to make. And then the testosterone was easy because the PCOS had already started it. And every single time we've ever had an estrogen spike in our life, we actually know of the few major ones that we've had, has led to an increase in our epilepsy, an increase in our tics, and an increase in our migraines. So much so that we're currently waiting to see a endocrinologist and a genealogist, I think. I can't remember the name of the other specialist right now. Somebody who's going to check to see if we're intersex. Because we've had so many issues with just the hormones we were supposed to have in our body. Every single time that estrogen spiked in our system, the one major incidence that we know, we had a grand mal because our estrogen had spiked so high. We had one pregnancy that got terminated, and it caused us to have our only grand mal seizure. Usually we have petit mals or absent seizures. And we knew before it was even testing positive that we were, because we felt so off. And then we started having grand mals. And that was the moment where we were just like, something about this hormone and our body does not get along. And we've been fighting since then to get other people to recognize that. But I have a good care team now, and like we're slowly doing that journey also.
And you don't have to get specific, but I'm making an inference that you may live in an area that doesn't have the most supportive healthcare for trans people and for women people, maybe.
I actually live in Southern California, surprisingly, but so
they all they would do is tie your tubes.
Yeah, so it was a couple. I think it was 23, and it was right after the Grand Mal incident. And so I knew that there was something going on, and I knew that I never wanted to go through that again, because I had grand mal. I felt sick. Literally walking out of the clinic, I felt better. Because when going in, it was either that or go to the hospital, and we decided to make that appointment. And then walking out, I started feeling better. And then by the next day, I wasn't feeling like I was. I felt like I was actively dying the entire time. And so when I went to the doctor, I was like, I do not ever want to do this again. I don't want to be put in this position. I didn't want to be put in this position in the first place. And I'm like, but y'all didn't want to take me seriously when I was younger. And here's me asking from the time I was 18 till 23 for sterilization. Do something. And they would only tie my tubes, and they wouldn't even cut them. They did clamps. And one of the clamps ended up coming free at one point, because they used 2 on one side and 1 on the other. And I still have one floating around somewhere. I've got problems with that. Like, don't get me wrong. And
I'm just picturing like it coming out on its own one day. It's like, oh, that's where that went.
Yeah, I don't know. It's like it's floating around. The last time I saw it was like somewhere near my spine, and I'm like, is that concerning? Should we be concerned? And they're just like, no, it's fine.
That's fine. Everyone has
Metal
little
clip.
bits floating around.
Apparently.
These days.
Yeah, and so when I finally did get my hysterectomy, like, don't get me wrong, it was painful, but coming out of it, but I felt better, like, coming out of surgery. It just like those moments where you see trans people coming out of top surgery, and they're like, I feel like myself, and I crying. We were emotional for top surgery, but we cried for our hysterectomy. Like that was just like the moment where I was just like, finally, like, this has been causing me so much problems and so much anxiety. We had such bad anxiety about pregnancy even before we had one, that like our OCD had, like, every single cycle we would buy tests, whether it was a possibility or not, to make sure that we weren't. And it was an obsessive thing to be like, I cannot do this. And then when it happened, it was just one of those times where we just went off the rails for a little while, and then we were just like, we can't do this again. We won't do this again.
Mm.
Andy, I can really relate to having a sense of relief after a hysterectomy, because I've also had one. And especially with what's happening politically in the United States right now, like, because my body was moved from the category of people who are directly impacted by abortion access to very strong ally.
Yeah.
who formerly was someone whose body was directly impacted by that type of access. And it was like the panic went down a level, like psychically, in my whole self, which actually makes me more able to be effective at doing anything, because I was so worried about it that I was frozen. I was paralyzed. And so, like, you know, there's something so relieving about dodging what in my mind is one of the worst consequences of, you know, having intercourse while having a vagina, which is getting pregnant and being very visibly trans, right? Like I have a full beard now, and like a pregnant man is what I would look like. And that is, you know, that's a whole, I would not like to be that. There are some trans men who do want to have children, and I support all of them. I'm not one. And so
we've had one on our show before.
yeah. So I don't know, for me, it's like, wow, that big scary risk that I'm so scared of, it's taken up all this room in my mind, like, is addressed now. How relieving is that? So anyways, I just wanted to validate that that's totally a thing. And I hear you there.
And like, even as like someone like who's, you know, assigned male at birth, I mean, and also as someone who's like never wanted children, it's just like that like sense of, oh, I can't do that anymore. Oh my God, that's like, it feels like such a relief. I mean, not that like I was ever really in danger of getting anyone pregnant. I'm not going to talk about my love life on this show, but that was never really a risk. But I feel much better knowing that that's no longer a possibility for me. So like,
I'm sorry, I'm going to redirect a little bit, just because if I would be remiss in talking about DID and all of these situations if I didn't bring up the things that my headmates are saying. We talk a lot about the relief that we get in our transition and all of that, and there were underlying medical reasons for everything beyond just being trans for us, for why we did, and there is still a relief through the system. But on this subject of the hysterectomy and the other, you know, trauma, the other slightly triggering topic, I don't want to bring up too many times, but because I know that other people are sensitive to it too. But we actually do have, I don't know if they'll talk, but I think, I'm sorry if there's a delay. I'm literally translating right now. Our headmate Ash, when they were going by Alicia, actually had the hardest time with the thought of not having kids. It was something as one of those agreements where, you know, the global, it affects us all. We came to the agreement that having a kid because 1, 2, or 3 of us wanted to was not something that we were willing to do. And so they had to come to terms with the fact that we were never going to have kids. And if that was something that they wanted, that was something that they weren't going to get. And when we did go through that loss, because while the rest of us were relieved, there are still people in our system that have a sense of loss for that. And every once in a while, we'll think about that in a way that is foreign to the rest of our system. And we have to come to for how they're processing it. Like, and Ash is one of the people in our system that still holds a lot of that. they've come to terms with it, but that's something that they're saying that they also want to acknowledge in system. Differences like that do happen, and there are times where we're not all going to get what we want, or there's going to be fundamental differences between the way that we've agreed to go through life and the things that we want, and the things that we want in life individually. And I do think that Ash has a family in system now, which a lot of our headmates will take on our littles as their kids or things like that, because we do have little headmates running around, and when they're left unsupervised, it can get messy. But there are feelings like that too, that every once in a while it'll come up, like, oh, we don't have that. We don't have, those organs anymore. We don't have that ability anymore. And while most of the time we're like, whew, okay, great, good thing. Every once in a while we will have a headmate who's just like, I understand why this is this, and I understand why we've made the decisions that we've made, but I still have some hurt about that. And and it's not something that they're resentful of, but they're like, I'm going to need to process this on my own time. And that's okay. I just was told that we needed to bring that up because we don't always get along.
Yeah, and that's absolutely valid. I mean, like something like having a child is like, to take it back to something we were talking about earlier, that's a global decision. I mean, you can't just like have one of your headmates be the parent. Like you all have to take care of that child. So and it's completely like, even though like that's a decision that makes sense for you, for the collection of your identities, some of those identities are going to feel that sense of loss, and that's even though they can't get what you want sometimes, but I think it is still important to validate those feelings.
And it's one of those moments I thought that we all thought was a great illustration point, because we talk a lot about getting along and communicating, and we're all on board with all the decisions, because because media and what people hear about DID is almost always from the negative side. It's always from headmates fighting and and somebody trying to keep control of the system and all that. So a lot of the times we do like to put our best foot forward, but we also think it's really important to acknowledge that like it's not all roses and rainbows. There's a lot of infighting.
Of course. I mean, you take any group of individuals, there's never going to be a full consensus all the time. So that's actually a great segue into our concluding questions. Is there anything that we missed about a DID and identity that you'd like to make sure that you say?
That was a big one. But just I thought it was important it's important to acknowledge for systems out there who know their systems, and then systems who might not have recognition yet, that like it's okay to get along and it's okay not to get along. It's like being a system is like having roommates that you're locked in a house with for the rest of your life. And that like, if they're your best friends, that can sound amazing. And then there are times where you're just like, I don't like that person, but we are still roommates and we have to get along.
You're stuck together.
And that's all okay. And for us personally, we have rectified a lot of the infighting and not getting along with acknowledging and accepting our inner world more than we hear some other people do. Like for us, our inner world is a huge thing. Most of us spend most of our time inner world, and we'll come out for a year or two to host every now and then somebody will switch out. But a majority of us spend most of our time inner world and are fine with that. And that's how we've come to an agreement on not fighting for the front, and not the dissociative amnesia that we feel or that we deal with has lessened when we realize, hey, anybody can take over at any point in time if that's what they want. And anybody can give up being up front if that's what they want. You don't have to do either. And like, we don't always have control over it. Like we don't have seamless switches all the time, and we definitely don't have control of who's fronting all the time, but just that baseline acknowledgement of, hey, if you need somebody to step in, you can ask, and we can try at least.
So another question we'd like to always ask our guests is, can you share an experience that you've had with gender euphoria?
We touched on a few, like after surgeries, we definitely had gender euphoria, and now being able to look into a mirror, which is already hard as a system, but like
it's hard as a non-system who's and so it's, you know, I feel you, fam.
Yeah, like we'll have different issues. We'll look in the mirror and we'll be like, trans don't want to look, like, and then we'll have this. We'll be like, we'll look in the mirror and we're like, system reasons for don't want to look. But now, like being able to look in a mirror now, and at times be able to be like, oh yeah, we feel more comfortable how we look now has been amazing. And being able, and then beyond that, like being able to look at our transition and how it's gone so far, and be able to look at our family members and be like, oh, we look like our grandpa, and we look like our family members. We look like our brother, and like it sounds like awful for some certain headmates. We're just like, oh no, we look like our family, but like at the same time, there's something validating about like we just look like the other men in our family, or we just look like the other people in our family, and we can like skirt the line on masculine and feminine presenting as we want, but we always look like we belong in our family, and we look a way that we feel comfortable belonging in our family, even if like there's family issues there. But like for us, that's been really, that's been a thing that's been like really nice, and surprisingly not like most of our friends are like, oh no, I look like our family, and I'm just sitting here like, no, this is showing me like I look how I'm supposed to in this family.
You know, that's definitely a great way of looking at it. Is there anything that you like to make sure that folks know about your perspective on gender and non-binary, trans, and or gender diverse issues?
That your identity, your relationship to your identity, whether that's gender or sexuality, isn't ever static. Whether you're a system or not, there's always a journey, and where you're at now might not be that might not be your final destination, and that's totally okay. And that it goes for the friends that I've had that have thought they're gender diverse and then end up being cis after trying stuff out. Like that ability to experiment and learn yourself, I think, is super important. And that you're not, just because you're like, I feel this way right now, doesn't mean that that's how you're stuck. You know, you can always know yourself better.
True.
Andy, we had one little small closing question from the chat. It was a while back. Mirami was wondering, where can we find more of your art?
Instagram would probably be the place that I'm most likely to post. I've stepped away from a lot of social media just because the anti-trans and anti-DID rhetoric that goes around a lot of spaces was getting a little bit too much for us mentally, so we stepped away from a lot of platforms. But we are on Instagram. I can't remember if it got shared. I know I posted it in the chat here for getting posted, but my name on Instagram is Uncensored and Psychotic, with underscores, I think Instagram uses. I don't quote me on that. I don't remember. And I will try to post more art there. That's been one of our goals, but it is a mix of system stuff, art, and awareness issues. So just a heads up to anybody who wants to follow.
I just double checked, and you're right that it is underscores. There's something you said during the little break that we had that I wanted to invite you all to bring into for everyone else to hear too. You said when you made your username, you were still figuring some things out. Do you feel like expanding on that a little bit?
So at the time we made the account, I think it was around the time we were 18, which is that period of time I had told you about. We were begging therapists for help, for answers to the voices we were hearing, especially because one of our family members was diagnosed at that time with schizophrenia, and we were worried that we were having schizophrenia issues that were being unaddressed, and won't get into how that was brushed off. But so we were dealing with all of that, and we were worried. We were being told that we were having psychosis issues by by professionals who had no business telling us that we were having psychosis issues. And so our username, Uncensored and Psychotic, got brought up because of that, because we were trying to find strength in the terms that were being used for us at the time, instead of letting those get like tear us down. And we've kind of kept it for the headmate that made the accounts back then. They haven't fronted in a while, but like that's why we keep it. But we do want to acknowledge that we don't want to use the term psychotic in a negative connotation in any way. Like that's not what the username was for then, and I definitely don't want people to think that those terms can be used in a negative way now. And like, yeah.
And you were
because
going
I mean that
literal
word
use of the word.
Yeah, because that word has, I mean, it's used a lot in context where it shouldn't be, because it has a very specific meaning, and I feel like folks, a lot of people who maybe aren't sensitive to like mental health issues or aren't aware of how it's actually used, kind of just use it as like a general term for whatever it is they want to, you get what I'm saying. I don't want to say it out loud, but you can just, I'm just going to beam the words into everyone's head, and you can think them yourselves. And this way we don't have to give life to them by speaking them aloud.
Well, awesome. So if anyone wants to go check out art and more, I see some very nice, I see the painted fish that you were holding up at the camera earlier. I love the rainbow cats in the diamond shape that's happening. I seem to remember seeing some of these in the Discord server. Some of you, I think, are posting these in the server sometimes too.
Yeah, I think so.
You also join the Discord server.
We go through periods of time where we try to do daily art, and that usually lasts about a week. But we'll do smaller projects like the cats was a quick like 10-minute project that we were doing with our Discord group, trying to encourage people to do art. And I guess I'll use this as a small opportunity. If anybody thinks that they're a system or is a diagnosed system and they want a community that they can talk to, I do run a small Discord server for systems. You don't have to be professionally diagnosed to join, because there is a criminally it's misunderstood, and there's so few people who will even talk to you about it. So self-realization is the first step to trying to find a official diagnosis. You can reach out to me on Instagram if you are interested in that Discord server. And it's very small right now, and I do want to keep it small, but I do also want to let people know there's a community out there.
That's awesome. That's great. Is there anything else you want to make sure you mention before we wrap up our show today?
Other than that, just check out the link to the DID research that we linked. There's a lot of information there, both academic and from personal experience from systems. They like to say that DID is very rare, but it's honestly a lot more common than people think because of how it starts. And I think a lot of people would be surprised that they may be in proximity to a system, whether they know it or not. And just to keep in mind that, just because they say that conditions are rare does not mean that people don't have them or that they're not around you.
That's a really good point.
Yeah, I mean, it's like a lot of other things that are, supposedly like quote unquote more common these days. It's just we're getting better at diagnosing it, and there's less of a stigma around it, so people are more comfortable to be open about it. So that goes for DID, that goes for being trans, that goes for being on the autism spectrum, that goes for a lot of things. So yeah, it doesn't surprise me at all that it's way more common than people think it is. So we're gonna go into
disabled and DID. It's common.
Yes, everything, just the whole checklist. Just run the pen through the whole thing. So here is this week's Clouder query that you, our audience, can answer on our social media platforms.
What can you do in your life and your communities to help plural systems feel more included and accepted?
Folks, you can, as mentioned, you can answer those on our socials. So coming soon, next week, there's no Genderful. But October 2nd, we're actually going to be speaking with Debbie, whose pronouns are they, them. Debbie is my barber that I keep coming on the show and talking about how cool my barber is. And it's taken like six months or 2 years. Time is an illusion. I don't know how long. It's been a while, but we finally got Debbie scheduled, and we're going to be talking about the science and art of trans people's hair. So if you have questions about hair care, if you're trans femme or trans masc, Debbie is a master barber and has a deep special interest in hair stuff, not just the top of your head, hair on any part of your body. So you want to know how to make it grow more or less, or here or not there, or whatever, show up for that info dump, because Debbie has a lot in their brain about hair. It's amazing. So we'll do community updates in just a moment. But first, Genderful would like to thank all of our patrons who are supporters of the show. Holly Blash, Winter Vespers, Loch Ness Gamer, Justin Baker Rojas, Sandra Mickelborg, Yaicio, Ray of Swords, Sherry Keller, Mirami, Hessian, and Trans Capybara. If you all would like to join this list of wonderful supporters, please check out our Patreon at patreon.com/GenderMeowster. And now Miranda has a community update. Let us know, Miranda, what do you want to share?
Yeah, so last week I was a guest on another podcast show. So I was on YouTuber Stevie Rose's show. You can find the link for that on my socials. I can also post it. Oh boy, I should have got the link ready before talking about this. But yeah, we did a whole interview about my trans experiences. We talked about Genderful a lot. We also talked about all sorts of interesting experiences that I've had. So definitely go check that out. You can find that on Phoebe Rose's YouTube channel. I will link it in the chats. And then if you're listening to this in the future, you'll be able to see that in the show notes as well. Just give me 1 second. I will post that in the chats. Just have to find it.
That's awesome.
I'm prepared.
So,
I'm a professional podcaster, I promise.
We'll put it in the show notes too, so folks can click on it from there. Take us out. Thank you, everyone.
Genderful would like to thank our guest for being on this podcast. If you'd like to catch us live, join us on Mondays on twitch.tv/GenderMeowster. Show notes will appear in the edited versions of the show on Fridays on both YouTube and podcasting platforms.
If you have a question you'd like the host to answer, or are gender diverse and would like to request an interview, please send an email to genderfulpodcast@gmail.com or sign up via the website at genderfulpodcast.com.
As a gender diverse community, the Clouder wants to assure our listeners that we are prepared to moderate our spaces. We will get positive and negative feedback on these shows and topics, and we have a moderation team on our channels, socials, and Discord server ready to deal with this.
Please join our Discord server at discord.gg/Meowster to meet the community and get a regular digest of solidarity resources. You can also support us with subscriptions on Patreon, following and reviewing us on your favorite podcasting platform, or engaging with our posts and content on social media at GenderfulPod and at GenderMeowster.
You can take a few minutes to rate the show. We will post any 5-star reviews on our socials, so get creative. Mention a special interest of your own, a project you're working on, or even say hi to your comfort person in your review. What power!
This show is made possible by volunteers, tips, and subscriptions. Shout out to the folks helping us coordinate guests, edit the podcast, moderate the live chat, and post on our socials.
Here's our artist credit. Genderful is hosted by Miranda Katita and GenderMeowster. Genderful's pre-show is wrangled by JuiceTex. Genderful's live stream is produced by Mirami. Genderful is edited and mixed by TransGriffin and FreeRangeMegs. Genderful's promos and thumbnail graphic are designed by TransGriffin. Genderful's social media is managed by Kainsey. Genderful's theme song is called Hope by FreeRangeMegs, also known as Soma. The current GenderMeowster logo was designed by Siptopia. Genderful is the intellectual property of GenderMeowster. All rights reserved.
Trans rights are human rights. That's right.